Irrespective of who is applying the Newton laws, the observation is same. There is no change in observation. Anybody knows those flat laws, flat rules, and they'll be just able to figure out what actually is happening there, and they can easily apply that. Irrespective of who is that person and what is his inclination, what does he want, if he is rightly applying those laws, those rules, he will get same results, right? That is the Newtonian physics, three laws of Newton's. But interestingly, the development, what happened in quantum physics is, I'm just trying to give you a brief of science so that who are more keen in scientific understanding, they'll have more clarity. And if anybody is not able to understand, it doesn't matter much. So we'll be jumping into the topic right away after this. So from Albert Einstein, we understand he proposed the quantum physics, and there is a whole lot of new scientists who developed this philosophy of every quantum particle can exhibit both the natures, particle as well as wave. So, and now interestingly, when the particle or wave nature is dependent on the observer. I can choose what qualities, what particular characteristics I want to see, I want to observe. And interestingly, any particular characteristics I want to observe, similar behavior will be exhibited by that particle. Very interesting. So now they have this confusion that if it is depends upon observer, that who wants to choose what particles property or wave property will be exhibited. So now with the observer, there's a choice. I can choose, right? I can choose what I want to select. So with this, they say this choice give reference to free will. I can choose something. And free will is always conscious free will. So I can consciously choose, I want this or I want that. You see, now this consciousness is coming into the picture. Till now, there was no role of consciousness, there is no role of observer. As soon as this consciousness word comes, so they start having a lot of confusion around consciousness. What is this consciousness all about? They have this thing known as consciousness conundrum. A lot of ideas which there is no clarity about consciousness. But in Bhagavad Gita, a clear definition is given about what is this consciousness and how we can perceive that, and how we can apply different rules and regulations and different ideas around consciousness. So without delaying further, let us dive directly into the topic about consciousness. So I will be sharing the slide with all of you. So now my first question to all of you is, what is the difference between me and a robot? How am I different from the robot? And if you see, the whole robotic science has been developed just to reduce the human effort. What I can do, there should be some machine which can replicate my functions. So now there comes a point wherein they are completely in totality trying to replicate the whole person of a personality. So now my question to all of you is, if all the activities what I do can be replicated by a robot, so then what remains the difference between me and robot? What is the difference between me and robot? Anyone of you would like to give a chance? Yeah, Janvi is saying feelings, very important point. Feelings. We have feelings, robot does not have feelings. Beautiful point. Anybody else? It's a very interesting idea. Thinking, feeling, emotions. Renuka ji, very much, thank you very much for giving us this idea. Thinking, feeling and emotions. Anybody else would like to try? Brain. Empathy. Yeah, beautiful points are coming out. Heart. Wonderful. Independent decision making.
Yeah, consciousness.
Consciousness. Yes. The most important thing is pain. They will not experience pain. We will experience pain. Yes. So, for an example, this entire recording, my camera is recording it, and all of you are also watching it. So, my camera recording this entire discussion, and my microphone is hearing what I'm speaking, right? So now, and all of you are seeing me and all of you are hearing me. What is the difference between camera recording my images and voice recorder hearing me, than all of you hearing and seeing me? The difference is of, as you rightly said, there is no consciousness in the video camera. There is no consciousness. Very important. Consciousness means awareness. And because there is no consciousness, there is no judging capacity. And I would say there is no experience. There is no experience as per se. Because I have a consciousness, me as a person have consciousness, and me as a person can have experience. I can experience whether it is good, whether it is bad. And because I have emotions, because of my experience, because I have consciousness produce experience. I can experience certain thing, and based upon those experiences, I can judge whether it is right or whether it is wrong, or we can have different kinds of emotions. Somebody can be elated, somebody can be excited, somebody can be depressed, somebody can be different arrays of emotions comes, right? Hearing or seeing different pictures or different scene of a movie, or hearing different kind of music. So that is a fundamental difference between a human being and a robot. A robot does not have the consciousness. That element of spiritual reality is not there. And because of that, a robot will not have any experience per se. And because of not having experience, it cannot reflect any emotions, it cannot reflect any judging capacity. Although it can judge based upon its own programming, but those judgment will be flat, will not be varying from a person to person. Every person have different value system, and based upon those value system, we judge whether it is right or whether it is wrong. So there's a first takeaway from this discussion is, we are different from the robot because of these 4 factors. So now, as we have this, a human have consciousness, emotions, judging capacity and experience. That's what would be the difference between a drama observed by a panel of judges and a drama recorded by a video camera. Emotion, experience, consciousness and judging capacity. So now, from where this consciousness comes? Where from this consciousness comes? It is said that the awareness, the consciousness is a symptom of soul. It's a very, very important point. Many times we will have these fundamentals clear, that consciousness is a symptom of soul. Because of soul being present in us, and we are soul, we are not these bodies, the consciousness is coming out. So soul can be compared to fire, which is flames of fire, and the consciousness can be compared to the heat and light which it spreads around it. So I will tell my own story. When I was like 4-year-old kid, 3-4-year-old kid, I always used to have this doubt. My doubt was why I cannot enter into my father's body and experience what he is experiencing, and feel what he is feeling, and understand his judgment capacity at this point of time, and understand from his perspective. So me as a small boy always wanted to be in somebody else's body and wanted to feel, think how they are feeling. And I never understood that, before I started reading Bhagavad Gita, that why I am limited to this body. Why I cannot go to somebody else's body. Because my soul is spreading consciousness all around this body, this structure. So I get limited to this structure, and because of my consciousness is spread in this body, because of soul being present, I can only be aware what's happening in this body alone, not in you. Because of empathy we can understand, because of different psychic process we can understand, but as per se, we are limited to this body itself, right? So that's a very important understanding, that what we draw from the point of consciousness and soul. So now, when a man dies, what do we say? When somebody dies, what do we say? We say he has left us. But if that person has left us, he has passed away, and that person's body is still lying there. So then who has passed away? We say somebody has passed away, right? Somebody has gone, somebody has left us. Who has left us? The body is still there. If that body is still there, then who has left? That soul who has left now. It is no more conscious. I still remember when I was in Noida, we had a small ashram there, and one of my monk mate called from Gurugram ashram, and he asked me, "Can you please go to sector 15?" And I was living in sector 50 that point of time, sector 50 ashram. So he asked me to take one flower garland from the deity, and go to sector 15. Because there was one of our well-wisher, he was a Supreme Court advocate, and he wanted, because that Supreme Court advocate died that morning, and that particular monk mate, my devotee mate, wanted me to carry a garland and give it to that family of that person. And when I went to that person's house, it was a huge palace-like house, and it's a very expensive locality, like very rich person. And when I entered into that place, everybody was sobbing, everybody was crying, everybody was in a very traumatic situation. There was a lot of family relatives who had come all over the India, and they were in a very depressive atmosphere there. So that person's body was lying down there, but same person I had met 3 months back. Same person. And I had to wait for 2 hours to meet that person. And he would charge 2 lakh rupees for 2 hours, 1 lakh rupees per hour for consultation. Because he was very senior advocate. 1 lakh rupees per hour, can you just imagine? Like $1,500 per hour, that was his fees. So now that person, same person is lying there. Can he still charge same amount of money? No. Can he still say, okay, if you have to meet me, you have to have $1,500 per hour? No. Why? But same person is lying there, same brain is there. Same person, same brain. What's the difference? So he cannot judge the case because he cannot have right kind of judgment. He cannot have right kind of emotions for that case. The reason is he cannot experience the situation anymore. And the reason he cannot experience the situation because there is no consciousness. There is no soul. Because there is no consciousness, because there is no soul, that's why it just is of, after some time that body has to just buried. Otherwise, we know after some time it's become very heavy. That is one thing. Second thing is, we would always understand that when we carry dead body, it becomes very heavy. Very heavy to carry, like 4 people is required, 4 people are required. And me as a person, when soul is present, I can have different dynamic actions, I can move around, I can dance, I can sing, I can do so many different functions as if I am so light. Because of presence of soul, I feel so light. But as soon as soul leaves, the body becomes like a 60-70 kg and it's very difficult to carry forward. So small spark of soul, which is spreading consciousness, is creating that beautiful effect of animating this body. You see, this is an important point. We understand that the body is there only because of presence of spirit soul. That's what we just discussed. So material point of view is we are bodies made up of matter. Everything is finished at death. But spiritual viewpoint is you are not the body, you are soul. You see, there's a whole lot of understanding behind this. So now we'll come to and you do not die when your material body stops to function. So we as a person remains as we are and we move to next body. That's what the previous chapter shloka said. So now comes the point, what's the difference between the body and the soul? What exactly, okay, I have understood, I am not this body, I am a spirit soul. It's because of consciousness I am able to animate this body. It's because of the whole electrifying or the whole energizing point is soul. If the soul is not there, There is no charge, there is no electrification of this body, there is no animation of this body. It's because of only presence of a spirit soul. But what exactly is the difference between body and the soul? So let us try to understand what exactly is the difference between body and soul. So it is said that there was a conversation between a scientist and Srila Prabhupada, and this gentleman says, Swamiji, I think our body is just like a complex machine that gets worn out and crashes. Why we should bother about some soul powering the body? So many times we may have also have this question. Why we should worry about the soul powering the body? Everything is like a complex machine. This is like a body is a robot. Prabhupada gives a counter argument to this person. And he says, does your car grow? First point, does your car or computer grow? Do you have a male and female car that unite and produce a baby car? A living body undergoes 6 changes, whereas the matter just depreciates. It is the soul which makes living body alive. There's very important 3 differences, and 3 differences are here. The first difference between the body and the robot is a living body always undergoes 6 changes, while the matter only dwindles. So, for an example, it is said that there was one problem statement again, and it was said that, let's say for an instance, we want to have such a system wherein we purchase 2 phones, one male phone, one female phone, and before the warranty it runs out, they will be able to produce another phone for me. Isn't it a very highly efficient system? If we can have one male, one female phone, and we can have they coming together producing one more phone before their warranty goes out, it will be able to produce one more phone, and that phone have all the modern features. It will be upgraded to next system, 5G, 6G, or whatever. Do we have such a system? No robot can do that. But you see, we as a person, male and female, can come together, can have one more baby. That is very, very fundamental difference. We have a power to reproduce. We can reproduce. And somebody can say, no, we have IVF and all this kind of thing, surrogation, this and that. But you see, the sperm and ovum always comes from a living entity. It is me as a person who donates the sperm and ovum. That's why we can have test tube babies also. So test tube baby does nothing but create an artificial atmosphere of a womb. That's all. Nothing more than that. So now the second difference is the living entity goes through 6 different changes. This is very interesting to note. There are 6 changes what a living entity goes through. And what are these 6 changes? Let us study that. So the living entity goes through 6 changes, and they are as follows. The living entity, first is birth. We take birth. You can see this picture also along with that. We take birth, we grow, and after growing, we remain same for some time. We maintain ourselves. Then we have some production of byproducts, like we have baby and such and such. Then we dwindle, we start becoming old, and at one point of time, we just die. On the other hand, the matter or the body or the matter itself only have 2 things. Manufacturing date and expiration. Not more than that. Date of manufacturing and date of expiry. There is no growth, there is no maintenance, there is no byproduction, there is no dwindling, there is no decay. It just comes into existence, it just dies. And this body also is able to manifest the growth, maintenance, production is only because of a spirit soul, is because of consciousness. A dead body cannot produce another baby. Although it can give sperm, but it cannot produce another baby. Such a beautiful concept these are. So there are 3 fundamental differences between a body and a soul. First thing is, it can give you byproduct, and the soul goes through a person goes through 6 changes, while the robot knows not. a living body have consciousness, that is thinking, feeling and willing, while the matter does not have any consciousness. The three most important difference. So now we have another beautiful example to understand the relation between the body and the soul. For an example, we have a car, and there's a similarity between the car and we as a person, this body. The car have a horn to sound, we have a mouth to speak. The headlights to see something, we have these eyes to see something. It has radiator to supply water, we have heart to pump the bloods. It has 4 wheels to move, we have 2 hands and 2 legs. So this body is exactly the replica of a car. Or you can say the car is exactly replica of this body itself. But if you leave apart those automated car and Tesla and this and that, the driverless cars, that is still in progress. But can we move a car, no matter how much sophisticated is it, without a driver to move? Can a car move without a driver, even an inch? No. No matter how much great facilities we have in the car, but if there is no driver, the car will not move. Similarly, this body itself may have all those great characteristics to see something, to hear something, to taste something, but if there is no soul, there is no consciousness, it's like a car without a driver. This body is simply a car, and me as a person is a real driver who is powering this car. If I don't move, this car will not move. This body car will not move. So there's a difference. There's an example we discussed that how we are like a driver and this car is like a car. This body is like a car. So that's how we understand these 3 basic concepts. So now, many times people says, Prabhuji, too much of philosophy, come to something practical. Can we see the soul? Sure, the soul will prove it, will accept it. Okay, all the philosophy is great, we have understood. But how do we see the soul? The whole point is, can we really see everything even of this material world? I'll share one small story with all of you. What happens is, there was one student, he was very great in science, and he was attending his first physics class in 11th grade. And the teacher comes and he says, how many of you believe in God? How many of you feel the existence of God is there? And there are few people who, okay, I believe. Then he says, okay, my dear students, whoever has raised their hands, have you seen your God? No, nobody has seen God for that matter. Have you heard your God? No. Have you touched your God? Have you any evidence of sensual perception that God exists? No. So if you cannot see, if you cannot hear, if you cannot touch, God does not exist. Then there was one brilliant student who stands up and he says, my dear sir, I have a question for you. He says, okay, my dear student, please ask. He says, my dear sir, do you have mind? Yes, I have mind. So, but can you see your mind? No, I cannot see my mind. Can you hear your mind? No. Can you touch your mind? Because you cannot see, you cannot touch, you cannot hear. Your mind does not exist. You does not have mind. And if a teacher does not have a mind, we are not very much interested to learn from him. So you see how the point that we have to be, everything has to be visible in front of us, then only we'll accept it, is not a valid point, because there are so many electromagnetic waves around us. In a spectrum of electromagnetic wave, we can only see in a visible range. We can hear from -20 to +20 decibel. So we have our own limitations. So, and soul exists in a different plane. So from this we understand that how not everything which we can see or which we cannot see does not exist. And this philosophy has been, even there was one scientist who explains this philosophy much more further. He explains the science of reincarnation. I know there were many questions related to reincarnation and how we exist, how we does not exist, and how all this kind of thing happens. Is there any reincarnation? So there was a scientist known as Dr. Jan Stevenson. This scientist was a professor in University of Virginia, and he did a lot of experimentation, and he had a lot of case studies, and he did almost 2,000 plus case studies of reincarnation, and he has written so many books. He has written books like Life Before Life, Where Incarnation and Biology Intersects, Children Who Remember Previous Lives, I Have Lived Before, and these kind of things. So he explains that. So before we go into the this discussion, let me show you one very interesting video.
So what happens when we die? It's a question that humanity has wrestled with throughout history. But a new study conducted by NYU may have found some answers. Dr. Sam Parnia is the Director of Critical Care and Resuscitation Research at NYU Langone School of Medicine, where he ran this study. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Parnia.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
What would you say, what actually happens when you're clinically dead?
You know, when people die, essentially it's when the heart stops. So this has been going on for, as far as we know, millennia, not longer. And when the heart stops, you stop breathing and your brain shuts down, and that's how we declare people dead. And that's why we give a time of death and we give them a note. And really, to be honest with you, until about 50 years ago, that was the point of death. So people become lifeless, motionless, the brain shuts down. But now through advances in medicine, we can actually bring people back to life even after they've gone beyond that threshold of death, and study what happens to them. And one of the interesting things, of course, is that the brain completely shuts down, as I said. But what's fascinating is that the cells inside the body, and particularly the cells inside the brain, do not suddenly become annihilated. They go through a process of decay that can take a few hours, which is why we can actually medically bring people back to life after they have technically gone beyond that threshold of death for tens of minutes, if not hours of time afterwards. And that, of course, raises many interesting questions about what happens when we die.
So tell me more about this study. How did you conduct it? And tell me about, how you came about reaching your findings, your conclusion.
I'm an intensive care doctor, so my job is to essentially save people's lives and prevent them from dying. But unfortunately, people do die, and we try to revive them. What we have found is that over the last few decades, many millions of people have now come back, and many of them have reported, actually, anecdotally, that they've been able to see and hear things going on, even though from our perspective, they should have been dead and their brain should not be functioning at all. And so we became intrigued to study this, one, because it was fascinating, and two, because we tried to revive people without brain damage and to ensure they don't have any disorders of consciousness, so not becoming like brain damaged or having a vegetative state. At any rate, so this particular study is the largest study ever carried out in the world. It was done at 15 medical centers across the US and in Europe. And we studied more than 2,000 people who'd gone through this cardiac arrest or process of death. And we did not expect people to have any consciousness or awareness. But intriguingly, up to 40% of people came back and had a perception of being aware of what was happening to them, even though they had technically gone beyond the threshold of death.
Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a lot to it. I should also add that among that group, 10% had a very deep, profound mystical experience that was very true to them. But interestingly, 2% actually had full awareness, could describe all the events that were going on that were validated. So of course the question is, why does that happen? And we don't have the answers, because to our scientific model, when people have died, there should be no more conscious awareness going on. But it sounds like maybe consciousness is able to continue. And by that, I don't mean that they're awake, but that entity that makes us who we are, makes Sam who he is, makes Rena who she is, the self, the mind, seems to continue and doesn't become annihilated after a person has gone through their process of death.
Were there any of the people that you studied that completely lost all consciousness?
Well, that's what I was trying to explain.
Yeah.
Everybody loses consciousness immediately as soon as the heart stops. It's not like they're awake and watching us.
Well, you mentioned that there were some people who remembered there was some sort of mystical experience that they were going through. Were there some people who said, nope, didn't feel anything, didn't?
So some people don't have any recollections. What we don't know is whether they had experiences and forgot it afterwards, and that may be what's happening. Because of course we forget a lot of things, and most of the people who are brought back have issues to do with their treatments. We give them sedative drugs, which wipes out their memories. So that's part of what we're studying now, is does everybody have this experience? And how long does mind and consciousness continue in some format even though we've gone beyond the threshold of death.
Do you have some sort of conclusion as to how far the mind and consciousness goes?
Again, from what we can determine, which
Yeah.
is actually fascinating, and it raises questions about our whole science, about what happens when we die, is that it appears that even though people have gone beyond that threshold of death and their brain has shut down, that entity that we call consciousness, the mind, the psyche, whatever you want to call it, does not seem to become annihilated. From the evidence we have, that at least tens of minutes, if not hours of time afterwards. How long beyond that, we don't know at this point.
For the folks who have lost consciousness and come back, have there been any long-term effects afterwards?
Well, those people who have these very deep, profound, mystical experiences, often they describe a sensation of being very peaceful, seeing a bright, warm, welcoming light, sometimes deceased relatives. And intriguingly, some of them describe a sensation of a being that they describe as being perfect and full of light and love and compassion. Those who have that experience are often very positively transformed for the rest of their lives. It's very profound, it's
Really?
real to them. They become less afraid of death, they lose their fear of death completely. They engage in altruism, they're more helpful to people, they engage more with family. It completely changes them. So there's something very profound about this experience that they have.
We often hear people say, I saw the light, some sort of light. Why do you think it is that some people see that and some people don't?
Well, so there are two possibilities. One is that, as you said, only some people see it, and we think that it might be 10%. But the alternative is that everyone sees it, but unfortunately, because of the medical treatments that they get afterwards in the intensive care unit by doctors such as myself, to save their brain, they forget it. And one of our new studies is trying to actually decipher whether people have had it but just forgotten about it. And so I think there is some evidence that more people are having it, but unfortunately they just forget it afterwards.
It's a fascinating study and a fascinating look into death and those final moments as well and returning back. Dr. Samparnia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Which will really help you understanding a lot of things. So even the scientist I was talking about, this Dr. Jan Stevenson, he has done a lot of research on the reincarnation, and he explains two different things. He explains that phobia of a person. How does we get phobias? So out of his studies, he says that the phobia comes from past life. For an example, he quotes, phobias are related to the mode of death to the person whose life is being remembered. If a person's life ended in drowning, there would be a fear of phobia of water. We have these unknown phobias. From where are they coming from? Somebody is phobiatic to weapons. He would have killed in the last life because of being shooted by an firearms. And he also explains the temperament difference between twins. I remember there was another of my devotee who is a married monk, and he had twins. And I happened to go to his house, and I spoke to one of the boys, small 7-month-old baby. So whatever I will ask, that baby will give me. No hesitation, take everything, whatever from me, everything you take. Another baby, I tried taking anything from him, he's not giving me. He's taking my things back. So one baby is giving me everything, one baby is taking everything with him. Temperament is very different. All the twins came from same parents, are getting raised up in same atmosphere, same culture, same everything, but two different atmosphere, two different temperament. How do we explain? So two different souls are in two different bodies of similar type. Makes a difference. That's how we understand about reincarnation, that we do go through from one life to next lifetime based upon my experience in this lifetime. So that's how we conclude this discussion from all these three perspectives. And now we'll be moving to question answer sessions. Or before that, we'll move to quiz section. So now, interesting section of the session, quiz. I request all of you to please be enthusiastically participating in this, so that we know we have understood all the concepts properly, and if there is any doubt, we'll try to clarify them in the question answer sessions. The first question is, are we as a human more sophisticated robot? That's all. Are humans more sophisticated robots?
No.
What is the answer?
No. No.
No, we are not. We are much more beyond than that. Beautiful. All of you know this. Let us move to the next question. What factors differentiate robots and humans? Consciousness, caution, experience, or all of the above?
All of the above.
All of the above.
Yes.
D.
The answer is D, all of the above. We have all four of them. Where does consciousness can be felt? In the heart, in the brain, in the entire body, or none of the above?
Entire body.
Entire body.
Entire body.
Yes. The consciousness can be felt in the entire body. The answer is C. Let us move to next question.
Where does?
Can two robots produce another robot by unionship?
No.
No.
Can they?
No.
No, they cannot. Perfect. Last question is, why we cannot see soul? Soul exists in different dimension. We have material eyes. Our eyes are limited, or all of the above?
All of the above.
Soul exists in different dimension.
Why we cannot see soul?
Soul exists in different dimension.
Above.
Yes. The soul exists in spiritual dimension, not on the material dimensions. That's why our eyes, our sensory perception are limited to this dimension of material life. Till 3D we can perceive things, but soul exists in different dimension. That is, first is correct. We cannot see from material eyes. Our eyes are limited. So the answer is all of the above.
Wow.
So here we conclude for the session, and
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share.